If you leave a 30-foot putt, say, 4 feet short, your brain immediately tells you that you just didn't hit it hard enough.
Right. You instantly blame your effort.
Exactly. You assume you misjudged the force, or, I don't know, you just didn't have the touch today. But the physics of putting actually say you're probably wrong.
You're almost certainly wrong, yeah.
Because you likely hit that ball with the exact right amount of physical force, but you essentially putted with the parking brake on.
It is the single biggest trap in golf, honestly. Yeah. I mean, we stand on a tee box and we analyze smash factor. We look at launch angles, aerodynamics. It's pure science.
Oh, totally. It's all data.
Right. But the moment we step onto the green, it's like players revert to the dark ages.
Yeah, the dark arts of putting.
Exactly. Suddenly everyone is talking about feel and vibes and, reading the matrix of the grass. And we just blindly assume that effort directly equals distance.
Well, that brings us right to the mission of our deep dive today. We are completely dismantling this myth that putting is just some feel-based guessing game.
I love that. It needs to be dismantled.
We're working through a really fascinating stack of research today, centered around a comprehensive study guide and system methodology from Puddleize. And the promise they make here is massive.
It really is.
They claim that transitioning to a physics-driven, system-based approach to distance control can save you at least 1 stroke per round.
And, I mean, in tournament golf, for the elite players, 1 stroke per round is literally the difference between hoisting a trophy and completely missing the cut.
Right.
But even for an amateur, it's the difference between breaking 80 or just driving home completely frustrated.
Yeah, throwing your putter in the trunk.
Exactly. But to understand this, we really have to look at how the Puddleize concept is actually applied, because this isn't just some theoretical white paper you read once.
No, it's very structured.
Extremely. The methodology is laid out as a strict course of 5 one-hour sessions, and it has mandatory independent practice in between each one.
Which tells me, you can't just read a few tips and suddenly become a putting savant.
I wish. No, you can't.
There's a gap between just knowing the physics and actually executing them, and closing that gap requires, actual rewiring.
Yeah, they call it neurological calibration.
Neurological calibration.
Wow. Basically, you are actively replacing all that subjective guesswork with internalized physical principles. You have to literally train your nervous system to feel exactly how the putter interacts with the ball.
So you're aligning your motor patterns with the literal laws of thermodynamics.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
Okay, well, let's unpack this. Let's start with those physical laws, right at the exact microsecond of impact. Because to understand distance control, which we know is the ultimate holy grail of putting, we have to confront what they call the energy transfer illusion.
Right, because we intuitively think the harder I swing the putter, the further the ball goes.
Which makes sense. It seems totally logical.
It seems logical, but it's fundamentally flawed. When your putter strikes the ball, the kinetic energy from that putter head doesn't just neatly pour into the ball and push it perfectly forward.
Like it's not a one-to-one transfer.
Not at all. At the exact moment of impact, that energy fractures. It fractures into 3 entirely distinct pathways.
Okay, wait. It fractures into 3 pathways, so the energy gets diluted immediately.
Concisely. First, you have translation. That's the actual forward motion of the ball.
And that's the good one. That's the one we want to maximize.
Exactly. Then second, you have rotation, which is the development of topspin. But the third pathway, this is where distance control goes to die. The third pathway is energy losses.
Energy losses.
Yeah, this is the energy that is completely devoured by friction with the turf and, crucially, the physical deformation of the golf ball itself.
Wait, hold on. Ball deformation on a putt?
Yep.
I mean, I understand the ball compressing when you smash it with the driver at 110 miles an hour, but a 15-foot putt, the ball actually squishes.
It does. I mean, even at incredibly low impact speeds, the golf ball is an elastic object. The urethane cover and that rubber core, they actually compress against the putter face for roughly half a millisecond.
Half a millisecond? That is wild.
And that compression requires energy. So if your strike is off-center or your angle of attack is inconsistent, the ball deforms inefficiently.
So what happens to the energy then?
Instead of that kinetic energy being used to push the ball forward, it is literally converted into heat and vibration. So you lose distance instantly without ever changing your physical effort.
That is fascinating. Going back to a car analogy for a second, it's like 2 cars sitting next to each other at a stoplight, right? both drivers rev their engines to the exact same RPM.
The exact same physical effort.
Right. But one car has the parking brake slightly engaged. That engine power is just being eaten up by friction and heat rather than forward motion.
Yes.
So when the light turns green, the cars are going to travel completely different distances. It really highlights that putting is about efficiency, not effort.
And if you carry that car analogy even further, if you're redlining the engine with the brake on, the eventual release of that car is totally unpredictable.
It's going to jerk forward, yeah.
Exactly. If you have an inefficient putting stroke, you are pouring energy into the system, but it's being eaten up by these invisible energy losses. Two strokes with the exact same physical force can produce a 30-foot putt or a 20-foot putt.
Just depending purely on how efficiently that energy was actually transferred.
Exactly.
So the core performance objective of the Puddle system isn't to help you, guess the force better. It's to maximize energy transfer efficiency so that a specific stroke input guarantees a mathematically predictable output.
Yes. If your energy transfer fluctuates, your distance control fluctuates. It is pure cause and effect. And that right there is the biggest difference between elite players and amateurs.
Oh, really? How so?
Elite players have highly efficient, highly consistent energy transfer. Amateurs are constantly bleeding energy in unpredictable ways, which leads directly to those frustrating three-putts and crazy scoring instability.
That makes so much sense. Okay, so if efficiency is the goal, we have to look at where the biggest energy loss actually happens. And according to the sources here, it happens right at the very beginning of the putt.
The launch.
Exactly, the launch, and the primary controller of that launch, which is loft. Now, we usually picture a golf ball sitting perfectly on top of a flat, glass-like green.
Which is an illusion. On a physical level, a golf ball is actually relatively heavy. It's about 46 grams, and a putting green is essentially a grassy sponge.
Right, it's organic material.
Yeah. So when a ball comes to rest, its static weight causes it to settle down into the grass blades, creating this tiny, almost invisible depression. The study guide calls this the nest.
The nest. I love that term, but that implies you aren't just rolling a ball across a smooth floor. You have to actively get it out of a hole first.
Exactly. You are always hitting out of slight depression.
Yeah.
And to get out of that nest efficiently, without bleeding your kinetic energy straight into the turf, the ball must be launched into the air.
Like, it actually has to fly.
Yes, it has to fly for a fraction of a second. But the physical parameters for this are incredibly strict. The optimal launch window is exactly 0.75 degrees to 2.5 degrees.
Wait, 0.75 to 2.5 degrees. That is a tiny margin of error.
It is.
But surely that window changes depending on where you're playing, right? Like, does a 0.75 degree launch still apply on a lightning-fast, heavily rolled green at a major championship compared to, say, my slow, shaggy municipal course on a Tuesday afternoon?
That's the crazy part. The physics of the launch window remain surprisingly constant, even if the penalty for missing it varies a bit depending on the green.
Really? Why is that?
Because regardless of green speed, the mass of the ball still creates that micro depression in the grass. So if you launch it below 0.75 degrees, you are essentially driving the ball straight into the front wall of that nest.
Oh, you're literally smashing it into the turf.
Right. The friction spikes massively, your energy loss goes through the roof, and the ball loses so much speed right off the face that it will almost certainly come up short.
Okay, so then what if you go above 2.5 degrees? Say you really try to, I don't know, lift it out of there with a lot of wrist action.
Then the ball becomes too airborne. It flies over the nest, sure, but when it lands, it bounces.
And bouncing is bad.
Bouncing is chaotic. The energy dissipation when a bouncing ball hits the turf is totally unpredictable. Sometimes it skips forward off a firm patch, sometimes it digs into a soft patch. You just completely lose mathematical control of your distance.
Wow. And here is where it gets really interesting, because the sources make a massive distinction between static loft and dynamic loft. And this seems to be where the human element totally sabotages the hardware.
Oh, 100%. Static loft is what the putter was manufactured with, let's say, 3 degrees.
Right, built in at the factory.
Exactly. But dynamic loft is the actual loft you deliver at the exact microsecond of impact. And dynamic loft is completely at the mercy of your mechanics.
Give me an example of how that goes wrong.
Well, if your hands are pressed too far forward, creating shaft lean, you might turn a 3-degree putter into a 0-degree putter.
Driving it straight into the nest.
Yes. Or, if your weight is falling back, you might add loft and turn it into a 5-degree putter.
Which creates the bounce.
Exactly.
So you could spend $500 on a perfectly engineered, scientifically balanced putter and betray it immediately by leaning the shaft forward half an inch.
That happens all the time.
Yeah.
And that shifting dynamic loft is exactly why amateurs struggle so much with distance. If your dynamic loft is constantly shifting from stroke to stroke, your launch angle is shifting.
And if your launch angle is shifting, your energy loss into the nest is wildly fluctuating.
Bingo.
Okay, so let's say I fix it. Let's say my hands are perfect, my dynamic loft is exactly 1.5 degrees, and I strike it dead center. It pops out of the nest beautifully. Am I guaranteed a perfect roll to the hole?
Only if you survive. What happens next?
Uh-oh. What happens next?
Well, the moment gravity pulls that ball back down to the turf, it does not instantly start tumbling end over end. This introduces what the study guide calls the hidden enemy.
The hidden enemy. Sounds ominous.
It's the skid phase.
The skid phase. Right, because the ball has forward momentum from the strike, but it hasn't caught enough friction from the grass to start physically rolling yet.
Correct. It slides. It just skids across the grass.
Mhm.
And what's fascinating here is that this skid phase takes up a shocking 10 to 20% of every single putt's total distance.
Wait, 10 to 20%. Let me make sure I'm following the math on that. If you're looking at a 30-foot putt, you're telling me the ball might be helplessly sliding, not rolling, for the first 3 to 6 feet.
Yes,
That is terrifying.
it should be.
Yeah.
And during that skid phase, the ball is highly unstable. It lacks the gyroscopic stability of forward rotation. So it's wildly sensitive to any surface irregularities.
Like a tiny spike mark or grain direction.
Exactly. A slightly thicker patch of grass. Energy loss is at its absolute peak during the skid phase.
You know, that reminds me of watching professional bowling. When the bowler releases the ball, it hits the oiled part of the lane and just slides straight. It's literally skidding.
Oh, that's a brilliant analogy, yeah.
And it isn't until it travels further down the lane, hits the dry wood, catches friction, and starts physically rolling that it actually takes the hook and behaves predictably.
Yes, and just like that bowling ball hitting the dry wood, a golf ball has a specific moment where it catches the turf and stabilizes. In putting, we call that moment true roll.
True roll. I hear that thrown around a lot in marketing.
Sure, but it has a strict mathematical definition.
Yes.
True roll means the ball is traveling exactly one full circumference per rotation without sliding at all.
Okay, let's break that down. A standard golf ball is what, about 5.3 inches in circumference?
Yep, around that.
So true roll means for every one rotation, it moves forward exactly 5.3 inches. If it moves 6 inches in one rotation, it's still sliding.
Exactly. It's partially skidding. The entire performance goal of distance control is to shorten the skid phase as much as humanly possible. Time to true roll is the ultimate metric.
Because once it's rolling, it's safe.
Right. Once it's in true roll, it's stable, it holds its line, it cuts through imperfections in the green much better, and crucially, it decelerates at a very predictable rate.
But let me play devil's advocate for a second. Why does a long skid phase destroy distance control if I generally know the ball is going to skid? Like, can't I just factor that into my effort?
Because that skid isn't a constant. It's totally chaotic.
How so?
Well, if you hit one putt and it hits a tiny depression in the first 3 feet, the skid phase abruptly ends, friction spikes, and the ball stops short. But if the next putt happens to slide smoothly over a flatter patch, it skids longer, it retains more energy, and it rolls 3 feet past the hole.
Oh, I see.
You cannot predict the deceleration rate of a sliding object on a chaotic surface like grass. It's impossible. If you have a short skid phase, though, your distance control becomes a mathematical certainty.
Okay, so we have the right dynamic loft, we launch it perfectly, and we are trying to shorten the skid. But what happens if the putter head isn't sitting completely flush with the ground at impact?
That introduces the indirect controller of distance, which is lie angle.
Lie angle, okay.
Yes. While loft controls the vertical launch, lie angle determines the quality and the consistency of the impact itself.
Just to clarify for everyone listening, lie angle is basically whether the toe of the putter is sticking up in the air or the heel is sticking up in the air at address, correct?
Exactly. And the physical consequences of getting this wrong are severe. Let's say your lie is too flat, meaning the toe of the putter is pointing down, digging into the ground. Because of the 3D geometry of the putter face, a toe-down strike actually results in a lower vertical launch angle.
Wait, I'm having trouble visualizing that. If the putter face is flat, why does tilting the toe down change the vertical launch? Shouldn't it just point the ball left or right?
It's a bit counterintuitive. Think about taking a highly lofted club like a 60-degree wedge. If you lay it perfectly flat on the ground, the face points almost straight up at the sky. But if you lift the heel up off the ground, the face doesn't point straight up anymore. It actually rotates and points to the left. The effective vertical loft decreases. because part of that angle is now being deflected sideways.
Oh, wow. Okay, I see that.
The exact same geometric principle applies to a putter on a microscale. When the toe dips, you lose vertical dynamic loft.
Man. So suddenly, even if your hands were in the perfect position to deliver exactly 1.5 degrees of loft, a toe-down lie angle indirectly drives the ball down into the nest anyway, spikes the friction, and ruins your speed.
Exactly. And conversely, if your lie is too upright, so the toe is pointing up in the air, it indirectly increases the dynamic loft. Now you're launching the ball too high, increasing the bounce, and creating an unstable roll.
Not to mention the strike location, right?
Right. A poor lie angle pretty much guarantees an off-center strike. If the toe is down, the sweet spot effectively moves.
Yeah.
And missing the sweet spot changes ball speed drastically.
So if dynamic loft is the steering wheel controlling exactly where the ball launches, lie angle is essentially the tire alignment.
I love that. Yes.
You can have a perfect grip on the steering wheel, making all the right physical moves, but if your alignment is off, the whole car still shakes and pulls you right into the ditch.
That is the perfect way to frame it. A consistent lie angle is the mechanical foundation that allows everything else to work. Consistent lie ensures the center of the putter face consistently meets the equator of the golf ball.
Which creates consistent ball speed.
And consistent ball speed is the literal definition of distance control.
This really exposes why isolated golf tips fail so often, doesn't it? You can't just fix your grip or move your ball position and expect to putt better if your lie angle is still a complete mess. All these variables, loft, lie, skid, launch, they do not exist in a vacuum.
They absolutely do not.
Yeah.
And that is the central thesis of the combined roll system within this puddleized methodology. It is a strict multi-parameter system.
How strict are we talking?
Well, they explicitly state an uncompromising rule. Correct loft plus incorrect lie equals system failure.
System failure. That sounds incredibly harsh.
Physics usually is. And correct lie plus inconsistent loft, also system failure.
Wow.
They have to function together simultaneously.
Yeah.
And when you synthesize them, you achieve something called visual stability.
Visual stability. Okay, so that means when the ball launches cleanly, transitions almost instantly into true roll, and just looks like it's tracking smoothly over the grass without wobbling.
Yes. And when a ball has visual stability, its behavior on a sloped green becomes incredibly predictable. Think about breaking putts for a second. The amount of putt breaks is entirely dependent on its speed as it approaches the hole.
Obviously, yeah. A putt hit softly takes more break, and a putt hit firmly takes less break.
Right. So if your energy transfer is inefficient, your speed is inconsistent. And if your speed is inconsistent, your break prediction is completely meaningless.
Because if you don't know exactly what speed the ball is going to be traveling because your skid phase is a total mystery, you literally cannot pick the right aim point. You could read the green perfectly and still miss by a foot.
You are purely guessing at that point. But when you master this system, when you maximize that energy efficiency, you unlock the three holiest grails of putting: speed control, break prediction, and hole capture probability.
Okay, let's talk about hole capture probability. I assume that means the effective size of the hole changes based on the speed of the ball.
Absolutely. And this goes back to that concept of optimal capture speed, which elite players really understand. The ideal speed for a ball arriving at the hole is about 3 to 4 revolutions per second.
Wait, 3 to 4 RPS at the hole?
Yes. A ball entering the cup at the correct, predictable, dying speed has a much wider effective capture area. The hole is essentially 4¼ inches wide. It will fall in from any side.
But if you hit it too hard?
If a ball is screaming past the lip with too much speed, the effective capture area shrinks from 4 inches to maybe an inch.
Oh.
It will just lip out violently.
And this brings us right back to why the puddleized system requires a 5-session course with independent practice. Because you cannot just listen to us break this down and then fix your putting stroke on the practice screen in 10 minutes.
No, you really can't. Your nervous system has spent years compensating for inefficient energy transfer by just, hitting it harder.
Just reacting to bad physics with bad mechanics.
Right. So during those practice sessions, you actually have to allow your motor patterns to fail for a bit. You have to recognize the physical feedback, like feeling a toe-down strike or seeing an excessive skid phase, and actively recalibrate.
It's a transition from guessing to knowing.
It's all about reprogramming that mind-muscle connection to sense-efficient energy transfer over days of consolidation. It's not a quick fix.
It changes the entire paradigm of how we view the game. We've gone from this illusion that physical effort equals distance to realizing we have to cleanly lift the ball out of its microscopic nest using precise dynamic loft.
Right.
We've navigated the chaotic danger of the skid phase by striving for immediate true roll, and we've locked it all down by squaring up our lie angle so the tire alignment doesn't ruin the steering wheel.
When you put all those physical realities together, the mystery completely vanishes. Putting stops being this mystical dark art of reading vibes. It becomes a highly reliable, measurable scientific skill.
So next time you step onto a green, we want you to completely shift your mindset. Don't stand over the ball and try to channel some vague feeling for how hard to hit it.
Stop guessing.
Ask yourself instead, how efficiently am I about to transfer my kinetic energy? Are my hands delivering the right loft? Is my putter perfectly flat?
Actually, I would offer one final thought experiment for everyone listening, building directly on what we discussed regarding the skid phase.
Oh, I like thought experiments. Let's hear it.
The next time you're on the practice green, do not look at the hole when you putt. Instead, lock your eyes exclusively on the first 20% of the ball's journey.
Just watch it leave the putter face.
Watch it intensely. If you can train your eyes to see that invisible transition, that exact moment your ball stops sliding and starts tumbling into a true roll, you will have an absolute revelation.
You'll instantly know why a putt came up short before it even gets halfway to the cup.
Exactly. You really have to ask yourself, how much of your distance control is currently just bleeding out and dying in those invisible first few feet?
That is going to completely change how we all practice. Start watching the result and start watching the launch. There is a massive amount of physics to process there, but hopefully you're walking onto the green with a whole new data-driven perspective. Until next time, keep analyzing, keep refining, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.